Now, I know that sounds like some really bad stuff. On a good note, we have had some really good things come out of the SCOTUS this week.
Yes. Yes.
Um, I think the quick and easy one was the student loan debt forgiveness that got shot down, because it's funny that people forget so quickly that Nancy Pelosi, who was the speaker, said Joe Biden, like, the president does not have the ability, like, they don't have the power to do this.
Oh yeah, he bought
And then
votes
he
with
did
it.
it anyway. And then you're surprised when he gets shot down. Okay, well, I don't know what to tell you.
Like, if you'd been paying attention, you would have known it was going to get shot down.
Right.
They knew it was going to get shut down. In fact, a lot of Biden edicts, they know they're going to get shut down. But if it works for that brief period of time before it gets shut down, hooray! And in this case,
It's just
working was
buying
buying
votes.
votes. Yes,
Right.
it was buying votes.
What's interesting is I actually saw a meme about that. So somebody was pissed about, and this goes all the way back to the election of 2020. And I'm trying to remember what the guy said. It was like somebody was mad, and they were like, "Hey, man, we all voted for Biden so that we could get $2,000 stimulus checks, not 1,400." And somebody replied to him, and I think this was probably a Twitter thread that was screenshotted. Um, but it was like, "Hey, pro tip: whenever you're taking a bribe for your vote, make sure you get payment in advance." Like,
Yep.
because that's what it was. And so was this. Like, this was announced right before midterms,
Oh yes,
right?
it was way too timely to miss.
And so it was like, oh, okay, so I can see exactly what you're doing here.
It's like September or
And
October. Yeah.
but it also gives them the opportunity to be like, well, I was trying to, alleviate some of your student loan debt,
Right.
but the mean old meanies wouldn't allow me to. Well, you know what? I'm sorry, but here's the deal. Adulting and life is hard. When you borrow money, you need to pay it back.
And
That's the
and,
reality.
and look, I get in some cases these were very predatory loans. I've heard cases where you've got people that were like they the university kind of implicitly worked with the lending group to kind of basically say, oh, you want your degree? Okay, you're going to have to get another $50,000 in loan because you've already got like $150,000 in loans, and you're going to need to get another $50,000. But on top of that, in order to get it, you're going to get still another $50,000 because we just don't have enough room in this classes or whatever.
Oh yeah,
And
there's definitely some shady things that are going on. I mean, if you look at it, university education costs have skyrocketed, and if you do them if you do the regression on it, that correlates with when they put into place student loan and financing availability for all.
yeah,
And so a um, whenever there is a plethora of money, somebody's going to try to figure out how they can get as much, if not as much of it as possible, whenever
right.
they're doing that. And then I hate to burst people's bubble here, but there was something that happened in 1995. Any guesses? There was a
I
piece of legislation that went through that was championed by none other than Joe Biden, that made student loan debt
oh
non-dischargeable
in
through
bankruptcy. Yep.
bankruptcy.
Oh God, yes. That
He's who did that to you. So
it's
if you want to
basically
be mad at somebody, be mad at him, because he
he
made
turned
it
you into
so
slaves.
that, yeah. And so from 1995 to current day, you watch the cost of college skyrocket.
It's just
Because if
indentured
you think about
servitude
it,
with extra steps.
right, if you think about it if you go back, like, okay, yeah, you can, why would I, if I'm going to loan you money, like, I want to make sure that you're going to be able to pay me back. And hey, like, it's a cost benefit analysis. Like, what's the danger here? What's the counterparty risk?
Well,
Hey, look,
it's
I'm not going to loan you money for a degree in gender studies that I don't think is going to pay off versus this dude over here who's going to be an engineer that I know that we're short on and they're going to make $100,000 a year. Like it
all
just doesn't, it makes sense.
all of the market forces that would normally correct these things have been removed.
Hmm.
So the evaluation on which degrees you should get. Well, if you can't get a job with it, you're not going to pay me back. Then I wouldn't be lending to you. So you can get whatever degree you want. Oh, you're
Hi,
not going to pay it back? Well, you're just going to be more indentured.
I'm from
That's
the
not a problem for
government
me.
and I'm here to help.
Oh God, it's a Halloween costume, scariest one there is.
I don't know about the scariest, but it's,
But up there.
yeah. But yeah, that's the reality on that one, right?
Well,
Um,
and I get it. Though. If you want it, if you say this is a blatantly uh, predatory lending practice, that's fine. I agree with you. Stop giving them out. Do that first.
how, well, I mean,
Stop. If you say this is a
I
predatory loan practice, why are you not saying we need to stop giving out student loans?
yeah, you need to halt you need to cut off the issue first, right?
Yeah. Like if you're saying that this is bad, we shouldn't have done it. Okay, stop doing it.
Yeah. And I think we should stop backing loans. I think that the US government should stop backing loans.
Yeah, I don't think that there should be any federally protected student loans. I cannot think of a good reason for it other than you have this
To
innate
loan
feeling
way
that,
too much money to the wrong people that aren't going to ever be able to pay it back. And so in order
well,
to,
no, I mean it's more of a you just feel that you have this innate feeling that education is important, but you can't define any of the terms involved.
right,
Importance, education, like
feeling.
well, yeah.
Sorry, you walked into that one. So, yeah, I mean, like that's the deal, right? And so the other one, I think I don't have a lot of information on. I haven't looked into it really strongly, but I think
Oh
it's
yeah.
got some really good. It's going to set some really good precedents. Is the frame and receiver rule, the ATF frame and receiver rule. This really corresponds to like Polymer 80 companies like that who sold 80% lowers that you could basically finish at your house. Now, people will tell you that, oh, it's easy. You can turn it into from a piece of plastic and 80% into a firearm in 30 minutes. Well,
Once you get good at it, probably.
if you're good at it, maybe. If you're really good at it or you have all the right tools, potentially. Um, like I have a lot of tools and I may have tried one of those and have never gotten one to function well. That's just the
Yeah, I mean
reality.
that's the reality is machining is hard.
Mhm.
Precision machining is harder.
Right.
And that's the part of what makes guns work well is precision machining. Now, some designs are more tolerant than others, but like it's I don't know if you've watched Brandon Herrera's AK-50 video, but you look at some of the early stuff and you're like, that piece is wonky as like it is not plumb true, it is not square, it is not,
Duh.
but it still kind of works.
But AK is fine.
Right. That's it. Like AR-15 was not designed in that manner.
No.
And it's
AR design was designed on precision manufacturing and super tight tolerances, and that's why if you get stuff in them, they stop working. AKs
yeah,
are designed with a lot more open tolerances. Now, given you can get an AR that's accurate to 600 plus yards, no problem.
right.
An AK
Precision
is not
machining
gonna
means
do that.
right. Precision machining means
But
precision shooting. Like
the
that's
other
how you
thing,
get precision shooting.
the other thing is most people, that's a mid-range weapon. I don't care if it's AR or AK. You're probably not shooting it at 600 yards vast majority of the time. Most incursions are going to be under
Right.
100.
Right.
Like you just
Yep.
can't, most people just can't see that far. And I mean, unless you're, well, in fairness, we were in a desert for a long time. And, but unless you're in a desert where there's open area, like if you're fighting close quarters where you can't see a long distance. Take jungles of Vietnam, say use in the forested areas of Ukraine currently.
Yeah, I mean,
Like it doesn't matter. There's no reason to have a gun that shoots 600, and
well,
it's more advantageous to have a firearm that will fire every time you pull the trigger because your life could depend on it.
it was a little different in the mountains of Afghanistan, and mountain where you get more longer sight lines and
Sure.
such, like kind of like the mountains of Appalachia, but just something to consider. um, but yeah, I mean,
Seems scary.
it's part of a longer march towards clamping down on the ATF.
Right. Well,
Um,
the reality is that these things have been approved by the ATF to be not firearms
uh-huh.
and thus not subject to ATF for years. And then the ATF came along and said, nope, you know what? They are now. And people challenge that. And where this is going to come up, there's another case that actually there's like two or three at least cases that are going through. I know
Well, the
Gun Owners of America has got one.
talking about the
Firearms
brace.
Policy Coalition has got one. Um, and those are the two big ones that I'm aware of. And that's for pistol braces, which have been approved for use for
Well,
over
and
a decade, and
it's
they're just trying to relabel them. And I think that's going to get shot down too. So I
oh,
think
it
this is a good precedent for that event
this
in the
might be
future.
referenced in a new brief. Um, because yeah, this is a part of an ongoing clamping down on all government agencies. In fact, what you've seen in the last decade or so has been clamping down on the first ones were primarily FDA cases, where the food less the drug, but and some of it was also the EPA, and it was
Hmm.
basically talking about how these like there's a West Virginia coal miner one, and I don't know if you remember the
There was an EPA water
yeah,
rights one that was they classified somebody's property as wetlands,
right.
even though every other lot that was in that area had a house built on it. And
Hmm.
so they had gotten their plans, they'd gotten all their permits and everything else, and EPA said, "Oh no, that's we're classifying
Wetlands
that as
now.
wetlands." But there was like a lake over here somewhere, and there was like a intermittent creek that's like on the other side of the road, and that's how they were like, "Oh well, it's watershed." Like so we can classify it as wetlands and keep you from building on it. And those people ended up suing the EPA and won.
Yep. I mean,
And so yeah,
it's
there's several of them. That's just one that I happen to know about.
it's an ongoing trend with at least the current Supreme Court, or at least with the last decade of the Supreme Court as we know it. It's mostly been, I forget, I can't remember the ruling, but it's basically the legal term for it. I can't, oh, I almost got it. But
You thinking of a
basically,
Chevron deference?
yeah, I am. Where it's the basic idea is that if a law is vague or ambiguous, or there are no definitions in the law, then traditionally the courts um, yield to the agencies, the administrating agencies' definitions, interpretations, and so on. But what this has been saying is that there's some significant limitations to that, and a lot of this is coming out to arbitrary changes of definitions. And there's no clear precedent about what limits that, but it sort of seems to be getting at like you cannot arbitrarily change these definitions, but also perhaps it's maybe limiting the degree to which they can set the definitions in the first place at all.
Right. No,
And
I agree. I think that's going to be the crux of the ATF pistol brace case
one, it's
because a machine gun is clearly defined in the Firearms Act of 1946, 64. I can't remember. But it was clearly defined what a machine gun is, and now they're claiming that, well, this is a machine gun now, or a short-barreled rifle, or
Short,
whatever.
yeah,
Like they're doing this on a lot of different things. They're really bad about it.
yeah.
And so yeah, I mean, like I see it more of a pendulum swing.
Oh, it
I
is.
think that the pendulum has been slowly swinging one way, where the government agencies have been just expanding what their powers are as far as they can go. And I think they've, like, all of them just seem to be stepping over that line at the same in within the same time frame, and people are going, no, not anymore, and they're pushing back and saying this isn't. And so I
Well,
think that's where you're seeing these lawsuits that are coming back. And a lot of it's never been challenged before. Like, a lot of these things have never been challenged. Nobody's ever pushed back on it. And so the courts are like, yeah, you know what? Actually, yeah, you're right. Tell you what.
well, I think, and I would like to thank them for pushing so hard, so consistently, because I don't think it'd be as obvious what they're doing if they didn't. And you got to believe that SCOTUS and other federal judges see what they're doing.
Hmm.
They're aware on this. And then there's some significant cases challenging the Commerce Clause and how much the government really has authority to use that as a tool to regulate things,
Hello,
um,
Texas.
and how much it can be used for. I forget what the term is. Uh, it's like the I can't remember, but basically it's the fact that states can't regulate it because that's the federal territory. So you're saying this state law is um, unconstitutional because it is encroaching on federal jurisdiction in interstate commerce. I can't remember what the term is for that specific thing, but those are collectively being challenged and reinterpreted, and I'm here for it.
I mean, Texas has got one right now in the courts. It's the Texas suppressor law.
Yep.
So basically, the gist of it is that uh, you know the NFA, National Firearms Act, requires you to, if you want a suppressor, to file paperwork, fill out a tax, pay a tax, to get a tax stamp, to be able to own that. And the way they got away with it was through the Commerce Clause. And so somebody in Texas, and I think there's a couple of others that are actually doing this as well, have said, okay, well, if if there's a suppressor that is made in Texas, sold in Texas, and is never transferred outside the state of Texas, kept here, used here, then it's not subject because it's not interstate commerce. And there's arguments on both sides of that on how that can, like, well, it can be interstate commerce because of this and that, and it affects the economy and it affects this, and okay, well, that's fine. You can make that argument, but it seems pretty straightforward that if
I mean,
it's
it's
made, manufactured, and stays within the state of Texas borders, that it's outside the purview of the federal government. Like, that's
and I think there's a fair amount of they want to delay this because it's going to be incredibly impactful if it's overturned
oh,
because it is
it it'll gut the
it'll
NFA.
it'll gut a lot of things. It'll gut
Yeah.
a lot of things. I really hope they pass it. I don't think they're inclined to simply because I'm say pass it, but um, rule in favor of the suppressor, but the rule in favor of Texas. The
By the way, I'm gonna make a call right now. It'll go to SCOTUS, and if it does, they're gonna choose not to take it up.
I think you might be right. I think that's one of
Historically,
those.
that's what they do when they don't want to address something that is could be unpopular. Like, they just go, "Oh, that's not
I,
one of the cases we're going to take this year."
I'm not even sure it's unpopular. I think it's more of this will break a lot of things that have been more or less functioning because it now says, oh, those rules the federal government put in place can't. Which
Right.
and here's the thing: the more that the federal government pisses them off, the more they may be like, screw you guys, I'm taking this.
Well, and here's the other part of that. You know what might happen? It could be that that they do take it up and that they do approve it, because there have been a lot of calls after the SCOTUS decisions that came out this week of people saying it's time we need to expand the court.
Oh yeah.
So
Oh,
what you're
that's what.
doing is you're basically threatening the court that you do what we want or we'll nullify your power or your strength. Okay,
One.
fine. Guess what's going to happen? That means you're not going to win any decision from now moving forward as long as I have a say in it. If it's me, like,
Well, I mean, that would
but I'm
be.
vindictive, so
I mean, I don't know how many of them have a spine. I think at least two of them have spines,
I
but
mean Roberts does.
that's say Roberts does.
I mean some of them. There's a couple of them that do.
He's spine-ish. I think two of them are in Thomas, but I'm not sure.
Yeah,
Um, but yeah, I mean, it's like just like I love the meme. Republicans are racist, and it's like this desired Supreme Court, and it's just all Justice Thomas.
yeah.
Um,
Their champion of the court is
one
the yeah
and then the affirmative action one. I don't know if you've read some of the arguments there, but
this which what arguments are you talking about? Are you talking about
pro affirmative action
the
argument,
decisions or the actual arguments that were put forth in the case?
both the arguments put forward in the case
Uh-huh.
and the dissenting opinions.
The dissenting opinion I have not read in full, but
I haven't either, but I think I've
Ketanji Jackson Brown's her take is rough, but guess what? That doesn't surprise me
Did she go to law
because,
school on affirmative action?
well, I mean, I think she is a clear benefactor of affirmative action. I mean,
Yeah.
if I remember right, and I could be wrong on this, but I'm pretty sure Joe Biden said that who he appointed to the Supreme Court was going to be a black female.
Well, I just
So
I
there's
look at
nothing
her.
more racist than stating specifically what somebody's skin color and what their gender is going to be, just strictly based on that alone. Now, she could have been, and she may be, you know, qualified for the job, but we'll never really know that for sure because she
Yeah.
didn't compete on merit. She was chosen based on immutable characteristics, which I think is wrong.
Oh, I agree. I mean, I think she's not. I don't think she's qualified based on what I've seen from her legal reasoning, and I use that term loosely. But I
Especially in
I
this case.
I can't. I'm not sure that I could fully tell the difference between that and just disagreeing with her. I'm pretty sure it's because she's bad at. She doesn't understand the law or doesn't care about the law. I mean, I can't. What's
Yeah,
the difference, right? If she's an activist and she knows that's wrong but doesn't care, is she bad at it?
yeah.
But
I mean, there's a definite difference there, but
right, and
the
I don't know
outcome's
that
the
could.
same.
Yeah, I don't know that I could tell the difference for sure. But it's like I'm still trying to figure out what exactly they ruled as far as like, is it's limited to certain states?
Yeah, which is weird.
How?
Yeah.
I
Well,
don't.
I because that was the basis of the lawsuit. So all
Oh,
you would really need to do is bring a
then
lawsuit in these other
lawsuit.
states, and it would be based on precedent. Either the lower court's going to have to rule this way, or it's going to go all the way to the Supreme Court, and they're going to rule the same way, and you're going to just look. It is what it is.
I mean, the whole affirmative action thing was weird because it was almost like the Supreme Court was legislating because it was basically my history may be off on this,
Okay.
but my understanding was that this was the initial ruling was because because there is a history of racial discrimination, that it was reasonable then to try to revert that and undo that. It was reasonable to have reverse the discrimination in order to repair the damage.
Well, and I'd have to look because I don't know what that ruling says. My guess, if I were to guess, would be that, hey, taking this into account when granting acceptance to schools is um, not abhorrent, but you need to do it within. It needs to be within certain
Well,
guidelines, right?
and there
It
might
needs
be.
to be, and it, I think there is a difference between like saying, hey, we need to pay attention to this, and we need to figure out if we're not attracting qualified candidates to apply to this school, then we probably should look at that and see why that is.
Well, I mean, that's the
Now, we
general.
also shouldn't grant admissions strictly based on this. And I think one of the things that has happened, and this is the basis of this lawsuit, is that if you were white or Asian, you were being actively discriminated against for people who were either African American or Hispanic. And you could see that in the admissions numbers
Yeah.
specifically. And so they went, okay, whoa, 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 this is way out of proportion. It's different. Like whenever you have a population that is, I mean, what is the U.S. white population? It's roughly what, 60%? The African American population I know is somewhere between like it hovers between like 11 and 15%, right?
Right. And you said it was. You think it's six? You say 65?
Something like that. I thought
Seems a little high. Well,
it may be,
no, I think it's a little bit lower
but
than that. I want to say
but
it's 70 something percent.
but it doesn't really
But
matter,
yeah,
right? But the admissions rate in these cases for white students was in the like 30 or 40% range,
right.
and and let's see, the Hispanic, I don't remember what the Hispanic population like overall what the percentage of population is, but I think it's like in the kind of similar, like 20-25%, somewhere in there,
Right.
right? And their rate of their admissions, like the percentage of the admissions that were Hispanic, it was like 50 some odd percent,
Right.
and African Americans was like 56 some it's 50 again.
Right.
Like
They're
these
very
were
clearly
very clearly outsized
right. It wasn't
percentages.
like we're suggest like you would have to believe that there's a inordinate amount of geniuses or something in these other racial groups
Right,
by a large amount.
right. You'd have to see
And
an absolute ridiculous disparity.
well,
Um,
I'm still just baffled
and
by
I'm
like
not saying that there's not. I'm just saying like the odds of that are freaking way low. And what's interesting is people have put forth that the actual people that are benefiting are legacies.
yeah, because they're the only
So
ones that of the lower groups that get in.